This video is only part of an unpaid, unbiased, in-depth review from an average rider's perspective, so check out the rest in the link below at thegoodride.com. If you want real advice, fill out the Me Harmony profile in the link below so I can help you properly. And if this video helps, please consider donating or buying through our links. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the wide world of snowboard gear polyamory. I'm James Beastie and this is The Good Ride. And in this video, we'll be talking about the Clew quick release binding and comparing it to a wide variety of bindings, because when I get something for extended demo, the best thing to do is to put it into a sampler and see how it fares. So I compared it against the Burton Genesis Step-On, new for 2023 and 2022. The Burton Step-On, the updated one that doesn't click and pop. The Flow NXT-TM, and I also tried it against the NXT-TM Carbon. The Nidecker Supramatic, and for reference, I also compared it against a binding I know pretty well that's softened up a little bit in the Highback for 2023, the Burton Genesis. Reflex, I also compared it against the Cartel X EST. And then of course my baseliner and my personal binding, the Union Atlas. If I don't start with that, then I don't have a reference point. So to give you a short summary, the Clew binding has some drawbacks, like kind of an old school base plate, not a lot of shock absorption, but it does have some positives, like having a traditional feel strap-wise on the top, and then this high back and ankle strap wrap around your boot and sit in that way, so you just pull this unit out. I thought that would feel weird walking around with this one footing in the line, but it doesn't. It surprised me. It's lighter than the Supramatic, and it doesn't require a certain type of boot like the Step-Ons do. So you can basically use any boot you want. It's faster in and out than the Flows. So it really comes down to what compromises you're more comfortable with versus Step-On, Flow, and Nidecker. So one thing to mention about the Clews is you can quiver up with these bindings. You can just buy the base plate and not the entire system, and then change out the top part with the other base plates and use it on several boards. So you could just step off one board and step into another, and away you go. And for powder days, there are two positions to click into. So if you accumulate some snow on your binding, you're gonna be okay here and you can click in. Now, when it comes to weight, this is 2.4 pounds with the screws and discs in. Not ultra light, but definitely not bad. In comparison to the Supramatic with screws and discs in, you're looking at 2.8 pounds. And that's one of the heaviest bindings I've been in. So that's the heavy end of the spectrum. But in comparison to, let's say, the Burton Step-Ons at 1.8 pounds each with discs and screws in, and in comparison to the Flow, it's 2.2 pounds, which is the same as my Union Atlas. But if you want to compare it to, let's say, the Burton Genesis Reflex, that's 1.8 pounds as well, same weight as the Step-On. One thing to mention too is the Burton Step-On boots are just about the same weight as most normal boots, so you're not adding weight on that end either. So when it comes to the Highback Flex, if you do it like this, especially, it's hard to flex because of this handle here, the quick release handle. But if you twist a little bit from the sides, you can feel there's a little more give than you would think by just doing a normal twist. And I noticed that even though I can't rotate the high backs to match with the heel side edge, give me better response, and also not bite into my even featured calves, as you've heard millions of times, they didn't bite too much. And I think it's because they have this nice bit of give on either side. So they're stiff kind of by where the handle is, but on the sides they're soft enough to give and not bite too much. So when it comes to the flex underfoot and what's going on base plate wise, you're just not getting much in terms of a modern feel. This feels very old school. and it does not help the board flex naturally underfoot. If you like a binding that stiffens up your board underfoot, then this is good, but it doesn't help with dampening, and this can lead to breaking down your top sheet a little faster than other bindings out there, because there is nothing soft underneath here, and it's just all hard plastic, fiberglass kind of stuff. Now, in comparison to Flow, you can see there's just a lot more rubber, a lot better flex underfoot, and even more so with Burton's reflex technology underfoot. This just flexes and bends down the middle. So even though it has some hard plastic in places that wears down your top sheet, it really flexes easy underfoot. Same with the Genesis. But if you compare this to Nidecker, it's close. Nidecker might be a touch better, but you're still looking at a lot of hard contact with the board. So if you like it stiffer and you want to stiffen up your board and you're not too worried about your top sheet, these are fine. But for me personally, I like to stiffen it up but also dampen it, like the Flow and bindings like Union and bindings like the Jones bindings I compared these against as well. Those do a much better job at dampening up the ride. When it comes to response, the Clews I felt had pretty good response. I didn't feel like the deadness underfoot affected the edge-to-edge response, and I felt like it was pretty balanced, especially in comparison to the Flow. The Flow have more of a surfy, kind of skate-like feel, so you get a little more response on the high back, a little less on the toe side than a lot of bindings. Some people love that, some people don't. When it comes to the Nidecker Supramatic, it did have a different strap type setup, and now Nidecker owns Flow, so you can see it's taken a lot from the Flow technology and evolved it. I like this strap setup on other Flow bindings versus just this old school kind of traditional strap. I like the one with a slightly higher ankle strap and a toe strap that comes down. I think that's a little better for me personally, and the way I ride, it's more like traditional ankle straps that you see here. And then the Burton step-ons, they're by far the most responsive and the most symmetrical in their response. For me, it's almost too much response, and I just feel too locked in, but it's starting to mellow out with the Burton Genesis step-on, and I like this more than all the other Burton step-ons. But in same-day testing, one thing I noticed is the response was pretty similar with the Nidecker Supramatic and the Clew. I thought the Supramatic might be a little more responsive, but they're about the same. So when it comes to shock absorption and dampness, this base plate does dampen up the ride of the board. It stiffens up the board, but it doesn't give you the kind of dampness like the Flow, like the rubber along the bottom of the Flow does. And it's in another world compared to the ultra shock absorbent, ultra damp Jones bindings and Now bindings that have rubber stoppers on the bottom, along with a lot of soft EVA foam like the Burton bindings do. And so I would say if you're all about shock absorption and you want something that's easy in and out, it's Flow and it's the Burton step-ons. They just have more shock absorption in the heel and the toe. The Flow has a nice combination of dampness and shock absorption. So Flow would probably be the best. I think the Flow is getting close to the ultimate in shock absorption and dampness, and that's Now and Jones. Now, unfortunately, the Clew bindings don't have much going on here. So there's nothing going on in the heel cup. And you can see you have some rubber on the bottom, but when you slap it into the binding, you can see it's suspended above the plastic on the bottom. So you really have no shock absorption in the heel, and then a thin EVA pad that runs, here, let's use this, that runs to here, and that's that. So in terms of shock absorption, this is kind of your biggest loss here. Even the Nidecker Supramatic has a small pad here, and surprisingly, it's better than Flux, but you can feel a little bit of EVA foam here, and it's way better than nothing, and that goes throughout the entire binding. So along with board feel, that's another big sacrifice you have to make for Clew bindings. Now, when it comes to support, I like this ankle strap. It's kind of medium sized. It's not over the top, but in comparison to a very supportive ankle strap like the Burton Genesis, you can see they're pretty similar in size. It's just a little bit smaller, and I felt like it gave me great support, especially in uneven snow. I always felt like my ankle was supported. On top of this, I love this toe strap. It reminds me a lot of the Salomon toe strap, wondering if they even made it in the same factory. It's a little different though, but it has some similarities, and it just fit around my boot so well. I just love the way this works. So overall, the boot support is really good, especially if you're comparing it to step-on boots that don't have this support around the ankle like the Photon does or the Ion does. If you're getting other step-on boots, I don't like the way your ankle feels. It doesn't feel terrible like you're on a binding with a tiny strap, but I just like that supported feel so the boot just doesn't fold there and make you feel exposed. The Supramatic I felt had good ankle support, but not as good as the Clew, and I felt like the flow with this particular strap system just didn't have as much support, but it's not bad. It just sits a little lower on your ankle than the other bindings do. And again, it's all personal preference. Now the ratchets are a little weird. They're not really easy on and off, but you don't have to worry about that too much because this is quick release and it has that nice Salomon adjustability. This is another thing that made me go, I wonder if this is being made in the same factory as Salomon or if they're using something from Salomon, because this is just such a cool toolless adjustment system. Now, when it comes to adjustability, there is almost none. You just have a gas pedal that can slide in and out according to your boot size, so you can at least get your boot on the gas pedal and get proper response. And then from there, you just have to use the disc and turn it the other way to make sure you're centering this binding in the board. Unless you fit perfectly inside without having to do that, you can't turn your discs sideways and slide them from tip to tail. So that's another compromise. But that's the same with Burton Reflex discs as well. And the Supramatic isn't going to do anything better for you there either, and neither is the Flow. So when it comes to this quick release stuff, you're making big compromises in comparison to bindings like the Union Atlas that have an adjustable heel loop and an adjustable gas pedal, and then a big old disc that can slide a lot either way. So most likely you'll be able to center this on board and then turn your discs sideways and slide them tip to tail. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not a super fan adjustability wise of any quick release. So it's just all a draw there. So overall, I liked the lighter weight versus the Supramatic. I liked the traditional ankle strap feel, but I was really bummed out about no real heel shock absorption and minimal shock absorption overall, and kind of an old school bottom. But I think if they dial that out a little more, this will be recommendable.